Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
So here we are so you were on the board of Expedia for a few years, but you also spent a 21-year career at Williams-Sonoma, one of my favorite retail stores. And then you left to join Expedia as the chief financial officer.
Yes.
What inspired you to make such a leap?
Well, it actually goes back to when I decided to get on the board. As a sitting CFO of a public company, you're only allowed to be on one external board. So I was very picky with which board I wanted to get onto, and Expedia came calling. And with the amazing board they have, the amazing brands that they have, and the industry that they're in that I'm very passionate about, travel, it made it very interesting for me to consider getting on the board. But really what tipped it over the edge for me was what they were about to, at the time, be going through with this transformation that they now have gone through. And realizing that they came from being a controlled entity, which is why they were looking for independent directors, and a company that was sort of a holding company. They did a bunch of M&A, which is why we had all the brands. So they were a house of brands. And they were very siloed in that approach. And so they had all different platforms, all different groups of people running these businesses. They were competing with each other. They didn't really know where their customer was throughout the journey with these brands, and they didn't have a one single loyalty program. And so when they explained that to me, I said, "Wow, they're sitting on a gold mine." And so it caused me to want to join the board. And then fast forward a few years later, they approached me about being their CFO, and I had no intention. 21 years at this other company, it's like a family. A great company, and I was going to ride off into the sunset and just get on boards. But for the same reasons as getting on their board, it was very intriguing to take this offer. Plus, I got to meet the management team and really saw what a great group that they had brought in. So for me, it was a no-brainer, and here I am 1 year later.
1 year later. So were there some surprises, like when you joined the executive leadership team at Expedia?
Yeah, I think I probably shouldn't say this, but it's a little bit of a case study in how little you kind of know when you're on a board, because you come in 4 times a year and you're there for a day or what have you. And so you're at a 100,000-foot level, and so when you come into the company, it's just there's a lot that you sort of are woken up to. And I would say the first thing that comes to mind is just the scale and complexity of this business. I never would have thought that. Just you think, what? It's hotels, it's planes, it's how difficult could this be? But I think it's the breadth of the categories that we cover. It's all the brands. It's the fact we're pretty global, and so there's just a complexity. We have the B2B business and the B2C business, so a lot of complexity. And then I would say the other thing that was even more interesting to me that I think is misunderstood somewhat by the street and everyone is the complexity and the depth of the transformation that we have been going through. I always say we were changing the engine out mid-flight, and literally that's what we were doing. So they touched everything: technology, marketing, and we maintained a business at over $100 billion. And have driven accelerated growth both on the top and bottom line. So to do that is pretty phenomenal. And so just coming in and really understanding more about what they are actually touching and doing along the way was very interesting.
That took years to accomplish. And when you came in, it was pretty much ready to go.
No, we just finished Verbo getting onto the brand Expedia platform 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So we're still been going through it all last year. And even when you switch it on, so to speak, it's not literally a switch. It just takes time for it to ramp. So we're sort of in that phase now, but we just completed it.
Okay. So and I noticed in this industry, a lot of people come in from retail into travel, because really it is travel retailing. When I think what is an online travel agency, right? So it's a big piece of it. So did you see similarities, or is there, what did you take with you from that 21-year experience to Expedia?
It's interesting because I would have thought actually on the face of it, it's very different. I was with a company that did home furnishings and kitchenware and actual physical products going through a supply chain, to a company that's a travel marketplace, so really different. But yet when you think about it from an operating model perspective, there was a lot of similarities. So both multi-brands, great brands, very tech-focused. Prior company had conducted about 70% online. Very sophisticated marketing strategies, algorithms. We both had B2B businesses that were successful and strong. Obviously, B2C side of things, global, although Expedia is much bigger globally, and organic and inorganic growth. So there's a lot of things that sort of were very similar that made it easier on that front. And then, of course, my financial background certainly, I think, was something that they wanted me to bring to help just drive more financial rigor in the processes and procedures as we move to a true operating company as opposed to a holding company. So,
well, you must be doing a great job because Expedia just released its third quarter and beat the street estimates.
Just the messenger.
Beat street estimates for gross bookings and revenue. Okay, so what are you seeing in consumer demand?
Yeah, it was great. Just to pause on the earnings for a bit, it was nice to see the street reaction. Certainly the quarter before wasn't my favorite, but it's a lot easier when the stock goes up. And I think from a street perspective, my understanding or my belief is that they were seeing that we're delivering on what we're saying we're going to do, which is something that we need to do every quarter and build that muscle. And we demonstrated accelerated growth, which I think then gave them the confidence to believe that Q4 could also be delivered, and then we'd hit our year guidance. So I think all of that is what sort of drove the reaction that we got. And of course, we announced a $5 billion share repurchase authorization, which I know folks, have questions about, like why now?
Yes.
And why that amount? And there's a technical answer to the why now, because our existing one was running out because we did our largest share buyback in the history of the company this year at about $1.8 billion. And so we needed to get a new authorization, but we went with a $5 billion because, essentially if you look at the size of how much this will probably be, it's a multi-year authorization, so it's 2 to 3 years, say, authorization. And quite frankly, at where our stock price is still trading even today, it's disconnected with the performance that we are delivering and the performance where we expect it will go. And so we think the best use of that capital to maximize shareholder returns is used to buy back our stock. So we're going to continue to do that opportunistically. From a what are we seeing, I think, consumer demand for travel is strong. I think it was interesting to listen to all the other speakers and hear them all sort of saying the same thing. I fundamentally believe the consumer is forever changed since COVID. I think there was a lot of concern that we'd come out of COVID and everyone would just go on a trip and then they're kind of done and they're back to normal. I think everybody has changed, and I think they realize that experiences and doing things, having adventures, being with people, meeting people, understanding new cultures is really what we want to do now for the foreseeable future. So I think travel is going to be very strong, continuing, and so we're seeing that in our business.
Right.
We're seeing differences in geographies, and just like everybody else, stronger APAC, stronger LATAM. We're less, we have less of a shift to that other than in our B2B business, so we're more US-centric, so we haven't seen the huge upticks that others have seen because of that, but certainly our B2B business has. Yep. The other thing that I would say that we're seeing is, and what people ask us a lot about is ADRs. There's this big risk that ADRs were going to go down, and what is everyone going to do? And we haven't seen it. So, the health of the business in the industry is still there, that we can command those ADRs and still.
Right, but I don't know if the planes are as full. I actually had an empty seat next to me flying down.
There has been some planes that have not, but yeah, there's definitely been some decline in travel in the airplanes, but it hasn't been as, it's coming off of all-time highs and so forth.
So and there's more capacity as well. So let's talk about some of those differences though, and ADR that you mentioned hotel. So hotel was up, so overall lodging was up 8% for the quarter, which apparently was the highest third quarter ever for lodging for Expedia, and but hotel was up 14%, meaning that Verbo was a little, brought it down a little bit. Yep. Now I know Verbo struggled a bit. Well, first of all, during the pandemic, it was a leader. Then struggled a little bit as folks started going back into cities. Was that an inventory issue? Like what happened with Verbo, and now with Verbo being on that single platform, how are you going to kind of shift momentum back for Verbo?
So there's a few things that happen if you're speaking to the third quarter numbers, which those are. Well, Verbo was unfortunately pretty materially impacted by the Maui fires. And so that was unfortunate drag on the business during the quarter. We have seen a shift to more urban, where we have less supply there, but then we pick it up in our hotel business, which was incredibly strong. And it's going through the replatforming. So, like I said before, like that is a big transformation. And when we do that, brands go backwards to go forwards. And so we've had to absorb that. And so it's been feeling that impact. Thankfully now it's come to an end. We've finished that transformation. So we expect that to ramp up and continue to move up. I think, that was another thing. People thought vacation rentals would stop after COVID. And I think, they're definitely here to stay. They may not be at the massive growth rates they were during that specific time, but they're still strong. ADRs are still strong. And the exciting thing is we have launched our new One Key loyalty program. It was back in July, so a little over 4 months ago. And the biggest differentiator is adding Verbo onto that program. So we've never had vacation rental loyalty. And there's nobody in the industry that's doing what we're doing by having one loyalty program that covers all of the travel categories.
Which makes a lot of sense, right? Are you seeing some early results from that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we've migrated over 82 million people onto the One Key program. And just this last quarter, we announced we have 34% increase year over year, and a lot of that is coming from Verbo customers. So it's still early stages. We're still travel. There's not a lot of repeat behavior for the majority of the people using
people just
travel.
coming in and coming on.
Yeah, and so they're just coming on. They're learning it. I think one of the things we're happy to see was that we were worried a little bit about HCOM customers churning more than they did because there was a decline in what we offered as far as the actual 10% versus a 2 to 3% reward.
Yeah, but that didn't happen.
It didn't happen as much as we thought, and I think the great news is they're seeing that we're getting these member-only deals from our suppliers that are getting them up to 20% off anyway. So it's sort of if you just pay attention and read through it all, it's still a really great program. So that was great. We're seeing some cross-brand shopping, which is what we want, right? Get them sticky and stay there.
Exactly.
And we're seeing a lot of the Verbo folks coming onto it. So all of those are wins. I think the real win is to see them come back in that repeat behavior and burn the points and use it across. And we got to have more time to really see that.
See that happening. Okay. Just want to go back a little bit to that the single platform, the transformation being completed now. And Peter Kern saying in the third quarter that it's now time to focus on profits now that that work is done, right? Now that we built that. And so how do you manage that focus on profits, which is an age-old question, right? While you also need to grow, you have strong competitors in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a dynamic industry. You can't sit down, you can't sit still. You have to continue to innovate.
Yes.
How do you manage that? And now you're let's try to bring up some profits too to the
Yeah,
picture.
I mean, profits are definitely a focus, of course, but we're still really focused on the top line. And so, I think the exciting thing is we just came out of, like we said, a massive transformation, and that caused us to go backwards to go forwards. There's always one brand that was going backwards at the same time while we're trying to keep that business and momentum going. And so now that we're coming out of that, and all brands are moving forward, and we're not focused. I mean, everybody was focused on migration, and that's just how do we make sure the walls don't collapse and we just keep going and everything's okay. Now we can move to innovation and optimization and put all of our energy on that and go on the offense and go back out now that we have this platform. So that's really what our focus is. And so, prioritization and things like that are going to shift more to that, and we're going to have more velocity of product launches and things like that you will see. And so that's going to help, we believe, drive the top line. At the same time, we do need to be looking at the cost structure. We did build up some costs, for example, in our capitalized labor and things like that to support the transformation. Some of those should start to moderate. And there should be cost savings that we can get, continue to get from our cost of sales and our efficiencies there, but also from now we can start deprecating systems. It takes a little while. It's harder than I think people think. But that should enable us to reduce costs of cloud, license and maintenance, all that kind of thing. So we're going after both sides, but I think that we're still really excited about what we can do on the top line.
Okay. So Expedia was kind of early to the table with ChatGPT.
Yep.
Are you starting to see any results or any influence on conversion?
It's still very, very early. I know it's one of these things, it's really exciting technology, and I think everyone wants to talk about it a lot because it is this new thing.
What do you think you're going to see?
Yeah.
What do you hope to see?
Well, take the friction out of the process. Have it be an incredible tool for personalization is really what it should be. I mean, travel is very personal to you. And the more that we can serve up to you exactly what you want, and get, instead of 5,000 choices that you have to go through and figure out by reading all the reviews, by looking at the amenities, by searching through all of it and coming up with the right solution, how do we have a tool that can help you? Maybe we serve up 5, so you can still have the enjoyment of the process of going through and still researching yourself, because believe it or not, you guys probably know better than I do, that that's part of the process that people like with travel. They like a little bit of that, researching and kind of thinking about it and the anticipation of the trip before they even go on the trip. And so I think to completely take that away, I don't think that's ever going to happen, to have a bot come to you and say, you're going to go here, sight unseen, that's it. And so, we're super excited about having it as part of our toolbox. And so we started putting it onto our platform. We didn't really market it. We didn't really put a lot of oomph into it yet. We've just released some technology that enables you to get through reviews faster and the amenities piece of it faster, so that should help with conversion. But really what we stand for is customer experience from start to end. And so we think companies that stand for that in the travel industry are going to be the ones that win versus just price arbitrage. And so this is a good tool that fits within what we're trying to accomplish from start to finish.
Okay. So what are your key performance metrics?
There's so many. I would say from a financial perspective, it's, the ones you mentioned just for our Q3 results. I mean, certainly gross bookings, revenue, and earnings are the most important. But there's lots of things that go into that. I mean, so we're looking at, traffic. Is it direct or paid channels? Which paid channels are working the best? We're looking at conversion. Are our products working? Looking at our returns on our marketing spend, is it effective? We're looking at all of the cost sides of the equation. Capitalized labor, what's the return we got on that? Overhead, leverage, I can go on and on. So there's just a list, that we look at. But
so what if I had asked you, what would your 3 key challenges be for 2024? What would you say?
It's funny. I feel like we have so much opportunity that, certainly, sure, we've got to figure out how to start deprecating these systems and kind of get in there and start going, we're on the other side of that hill now. So we've got to dig in and start really prioritizing and rethinking about how we're going to shift now more to the offense, which is the work we're doing right now. But I just see next year as a massive opportunity because we're coming out of this migration. So we should be really in a good spot to continue to drive that business going forward. And so I don't think, certainly things that are out of our control are concerning. We have the unfortunate escalation that's going on in the Middle East. If that were, to continue, or if, the fear of recession, that has been a fear of recession, I think, now for 2 years. So, if that were to show up, things like that could cause, some challenges. But I think out of the things that are in our control, we're sitting in a good spot that I don't worry about that as much.
Right, and it's not just a B2C, right? You got B2B, you go 26% growth in B2B.
Yeah.
Working with MasterCard, like banks, financial institutions.
Yeah,
that's a growing piece
our
of the business.
B2B business is fantastic. We're the leader in our industry in B2B, and we have tremendous growth ahead for that business, both with existing customers, but also with new partners that we plan to bring in. And I think the beauty of this business, as many of you I'm sure know, it's a long sales cycle, but once you get them sort of in the door, you get them all connected with the technology, for the most part they stick. And so the business is somewhat of an annuity, for lack of a better word. And so we've been adding and adding and adding, and when you land new, good, strong partners like we have, like Walmart and MasterCard, that helps with the sales cycle for sure, because then there's trust and people believe that this is the right.
You recently broke up with one though, Hopper.
We did recently break up with one, yes, and as we said, there's, they had business practices that just didn't speak to us, and we didn't think were right for our customers and for our partners, and so we did what we thought was the right thing. They weren't material to our business, and that's where we landed with that.
So Julie, we have time for one more question. So I want to ask you, what would be your dream? So you have a dream M&A budget. What would you look for? What would you do with it? How would you evaluate? And what would you, do you have any holes to fill? What would you do with it?
Yeah, I pause because we've got some corp dev folks in the audience here, so we don't have a dream budget. Just
oh, they're like,
so just
bummer.
Really, we spent the last, 2 to 3 years divesting a lot of companies from our business. We were trying to simplify the business, and we really want to put our effort on our 3 core brands. And so it hasn't been as big of an emphasis lately. But with that said, getting out of this migration, now we're moving on to the offense. I mean, what things could help us with that? And so from a strategic perspective, the teams are always inundated and looking at all kinds of things that come their way, and so we're always open to it. But at this moment, we don't have anything like to announce on stage or
not
anything.
tomorrow. Okay. All right. Well, more to come. Ladies and gentlemen, Julie Whalen.